Howdy-o, what do you know? This is Rabbit of Scrublead Academy, and this is Lore for Scrubs. Yorrick Amanatu. Yorrick Amanatu is the son of the late Korchan Amanatu, a pirate of the Thunder Sea who died just before the resettlement of Capital City. Yorrick could trace his roots all the way back to the Cloud Reavers of the Lazar Principalities, the former of which Korchan broke away from after failing to claim the crown of Crag. The Amanatu pirates sailed and pillaged under the banner of the Broken Crown to memorialize this occasion. After his father died on the open seas, a death pretty much everyone saw coming, Yorrick put his lot in with a couple of well-known smugglers by the names of Malo Lasite and Collis Elshadra, and an infamous pirate lord named Delera Omaran, forming a loose alliance called the Storm Lords. Yorrick, however, knew he was no diplomat compared to Delira, Malo, or particularly Selshadra, which is why he didn't even try to shore his political weakness up. Instead, he just made a big ol' strength when he took control of the army. The pirates and smugglers, who would soon lose those labels in favor of more promising ones, detailing them as the heads of prominent families, signed the Stormreach Compact in 802 YK, a treaty negotiated by Collis that would give Capital City sovereignty if they elected a fifth lord, Yolan Wilkes, to co-lead alongside them. Considering the spread of power and the potential for gaining more, at the very least, Yorrick was happy with this agreement, and he and Collis became friendly as a result. After using Collis to deal with the King of Galifar, Yorrick started consolidating his power, a trial made easier by the military incompetence of his fellow lords. While he was a lackluster politician, Yorrick quickly became an excellent war leader. Aside from Delira Omaran, Yorrick was easily the strongest of the pirate lords, and he made commanders of his own reavers. It was an enormous undertaking, changing their mindsets from pillaging to protecting, but it surprisingly worked. The forces became the larger part of the city guard, his reavers Capital City's generals. Delira Omaran, for her part in unintentionally furthering the consolidation of Yorrick's power, neglected her former role as a one-time nightmare upon the open Thunder Sea, and instead tried to put her energy into economic supremacy. Unfortunately for her, her own lack of foresight and skill with political economics proved her downfall, and her family lost the majority of their wealth over 2 generations fulfilling foolish, largely blacksmithing-related contracts she signed off on. Much of Yorrick's current power he owed to Delira's incompetence. It was her massively short-sighted ambitions that left the Omarans in such unsavory shape. Her last act as ruler before her presence waned and she eventually faded was to provide funeral space, mausoleums, and graves for all of Capital City's citizens, which further drained her own resources and allowed Yorrick to dominate. Yorrick's rule of the military became an almost religious ordeal, with his people seeing him as the stone grounding Capital City in the wild lands of Zendrick, at the edge of a more tumultuous Thunder Sea. When there was dissent, Yorrick was there to put it to rest. When there was a war, Yorrick's forces helmed the walls. And what's more, Yorrick always fought beside them, earning himself a reputation as the greatest warrior in the city. The Steel of Stormreach indeed. Capital City faced several major crises throughout its almost 200-year lifespan. The first, the Omaran Revolt, was a military coup led by Castal Omaran in 890 YK. Castal wanted to shatter the dominance of the other lords, particularly Yorrick, and seize control of the city for his family alone. The Selshadras and Lassites, neither one particularly mighty, could hardly contend with them. An attempt on Collis Selshadra is said to have ended his life, as his presence was never seen again. Yorrick, by this point, took the threat very seriously. Of the 5 coin lords, it's fair to say that he probably had the best relationship with Collis, as the two rarely stepped on one another's toes, despite Collis's underground criminal network. Castal, in a turn from his bid for domination, soon realized that he had to persuade some of the guard to go turncoat. His own Omaran forces, minimized in number by Delira Omaran's economic blunders decades prior, were insufficient for the rebellion and rapidly losing the fight against Yorrick's city guard. Unfortunately for him, he vastly underestimated the loyalty of the guard. By this time, they saw Yorrick as the only thing keeping the city together, and it was especially difficult to break that kind of bond when one wants to tear the entire city apart. It was even more difficult, considering that Yorrick was winning, very obviously. Castel desperately needed new forces, but there was really only one place left to turn: the criminal underbelly of Capital City. Unfortunately, he was not the only one with his eye on the prize. Yorrick performed a careful, uncharacteristically chaotic move when the fighting died down a bit, a move that actually proved instrumental in his victory. He secured the larger part of the criminal underbelly, most of whom had actually been loyal to Cullis el Shadra, if only out of fear. Yorrick promised them amnesty when he would eventually take over the city for the remaining Stormlords, in a perversion of the amnesty granted by Galifar for the Stormlords themselves. He would pardon their crimes as long as they worked for him. The promise was a ploy, of course. Yorrick was not above underhanded tactics. He had to get Castel out in the open so he could cleave the traitor's head from his shoulders. He needed the underbelly rats. Then, to hell with them. Yorrick's strategy worked. With his own forces dwindling, Castel got brazen in his attacks. He was eventually pinned down and brought before Yorrick. It was over, and Yorrick made good on his promise, bringing a great spectacle to Capital City. The show of what would happen to those who would tear his city apart. Unfortunately for Yorrick, this public display would prove a thorn in his side until the day he died. It took the combined efforts of the remaining coin lords to remind him of his contract with Galifar, a contract Yorrick saw as more advantageous to obey than to reject. He had to keep the Elmarans in their position of power. The stability of Capital City depended on his mercy, or he'd risk being seen as a ruthless despot. Considering the rapid growth of the city, and the massive influx of population that he did not control, he may have owned the guard, but he definitely didn't own the people. He didn't have the skills for that, he didn't have the power anymore, and if he rejected the law now, it could force his own allies to fear him. Besides, in a way, Yorrick gained a sense of what it meant to be the hero of Capital City, not the king of it. Strategically speaking, the best move he could do was let the people make a hero out of him, and in time, that would give him the best shot of taking over completely.